Yeah, so we'll go one step further. In the first 2 years of ResponSEAble, we've been doing some kind of in the office or in library investigation, so that the kind of product or ocean literacy supporting work we will develop in the coming 2 years be grounded in some kind of knowledge about all this system and all these behaviors that we want to change. And one part of the work, and Tamer has reflected on part of the work we've done, and I think Steve has given a lot about the kind of a psychological science inside. The one I'm presenting here is more about the concept. We use the concept of value chains, which comes, I assume, from the economist and economic theory. Just to review that, we should first say that the value chain in the origin of the concept was developed by an author called Porter. And Porter was working in business management. And the primary idea is that if you are a business, in your business is organized in different set of activities. And the logic of the business is to create value, to bring rewards to labor, to capital investors, and even to the states through paying taxes. And so you should know where you create your value, because it's where you create the value that you are going to invest time and resources. And where you lose value, you're going to pass it somewhere else. So this was an interesting start, because it's an insight into the business margin for behavioral change is very much grounded into that analysis. But then going from business management, as you may know, business management and economics, two very different things, no much relation. The economists have developed and worked on another concept, which they call which has been called in English two names, value chain or supply chain. Would rather say supply chains. And this is a very linear approach. And it looks, the core is not one business. The core is the product. The product from its raw material to the final transformation of the raw material. And this concept has been used to try to understand, for example, why an industry gets more segmented or more concentrated. Why at some point, for example, the squid fishery in Europe has started to really to segment very heavily, where you catch the squid here in Europe, then you send it to Thailand for processing, and then you bring it back to Europe for selling to the consumer. Why has that happened? And understanding that is very important, because it goes all with understanding why business decisions are made like that, all the implications. But this is a very, and it used to be, and it is still as it is used, a very linear approach. So in evolving along these lines of the value chain and supply chain, we come across for ResponSEAble, with the idea that looking at the value chain should serve different purposes. And one of the purposes is to try to identify, starting from one business or one activity or one individuals that exerts a direct pressure on the marine ecosystem or on the marine environment, how this business or this person is related downstream and upstream, which is the linear view of the supply chain that we had before. But we say the word is just a creative from last night with Joanna, so that's why it's in bracket. The side stream, all the connected on the side activities that are connected and can also be part of the chain of cause and effects that leads to the pressure on the environment. The second one is that this link between an activity and the marine environment can be seen from two different angles. One, if you go to the value chain and the basic traditional concept of the value or supply chain, you can start from a product, like the cosmetics is a product entry. But you can also take it from a pressure, and I will illustrate my talk with an example, which is invasive species. So the idea is to expand the concept of value chain or supply chain from a very pure product-oriented to a product and pressure entry to analyze a problem. And in some cases, if you look from the product to the environment, you can go back to a concept which is the life cycle. If you start from the pressure to the environment, you go to what MSFD and DPSIR, all these frameworks, provide as analytical framework. Some have mentioned the ecosystem services framework, but this is a little bit more for the future. By opening the value chain, we want to analyze the range of stakeholders which are in business, including consumers, but also all these surrounding circles of influences that can contribute to frame individual decision, individual choices, or individual behaviors. And then what we wanted to do, and that's the kind of information that is available with the C précis that you've got with you, is through assembling some level of data of information, can we get an idea or ponder the relative importance of different segments of activities or actors in terms of their role or their importance or their influence on the pressure? The idea is to help us and helps OL or ocean literacy actors to better target their messages and choose their audiences. So the value chain approach that we have is a systemic approach to the value chain which mixes a product entry and a pressure approach. And we found out in the work that's been done and coordinated by a colleague from the University of Galway, trying to put down a kind of a knowledge base and structure a knowledge base in which people wanting to develop products could find information. We come up with the idea that it would be interesting to start with activities. And you see that in activities, when we work at designing our value chains, we start with this linear product-oriented value chain, from raw material to distribution, through different steps of processing. But on the side, we have different businesses that supply. An example, for example, in fisheries. One of the fisheries problems is ghost nets. But the solution to ghost net is not only with changing behavior among fishermen. It needs also that people who are producing net makers use more bio-friendly material and produce nets that are, in terms of price, affordable by fishermen. So you can go on the side, and on the side you find suppliers, you find transport. We can have a key role into some, like in the microplastic. A lot of the bits that are lost at sea are lost when shifting from the boat to the truck, or from truck to the boat in the harbors. And the first link we're looking for is all these activities, how do they relate to one or different pressure on the marine environment? But then it's not enough if we want to develop a full breadth of ocean literacy products. We should also think that behind these activities, there is a set of actors. And of course, there are core actors, which are the actors of the real product and pressure value chain. But around these actors, there are a lot of collective, regulator, politicians, and citizens and consumers. Consumption is part of an activity, but consumer is a target group, and consumers are also citizens. So that's what we have tried to do as a concept to apply to our different, what we call key stories or topic or issue that we have selected to develop value chains. One example was developed here, and so this was going to be presented by Maggie from Seven, who was a speak that was on the agenda, but our colleague from Seven couldn't make it to come here, so we're just taking up their examples into the presentation. So our value chain analysis provides an economic description of activities influencing the pressure, analyze legislative, technological, and social context of the value chain, because they are very key, very important drivers into what happens and the dynamic of the relation between the value chain and the pressure. Understanding actors' role, including large circles of influencers and their interrelationship, and try to assess the link, where are the direct links and indirect links to the environmental pressures. And what we try to do, and you see that in the C traces, what are the potential areas of changing behaviors and opportunities and constraints for these changes, where are they? One example, the invasive alien species. So the topic we choose is a pressure. But for us as economists or people working on the value chain, the pressure is like the product, is an output of a succession of activities. The only thing is that it's a negative output, as you probably everybody knows the terms externalities or negative impact. So it is an output. Just it is an output that is not considered the same way by everybody, because it's a no-cost output. It's just to externalize the cost. So here we don't start from shipping, which is delivering a service, but we start from invasive alien species. So question is, what are the main activities relating to the issue of invasive species? A big one is ballasting and deballasting, and it goes back to main activity sea and coastal transport. And this is water transport into shipping. Another one goes from biofueling, that goes from the hull of the boats and all the transports of non-native species to other places. So that's how direct activity relates to the pressure. And going back in activities, who is demanding? What do we transport? Why do we need a lot of shipping? Of course, there's a lot of raw material. There's a lot of the shipbuilding activity that is related to that. And of course, demand is at the end is manufacturing, and this is serving, of course, at the end consumption. So we find a kind of a main activities chain. And there are many other activities, like sailing boats are part of the problem. So recreational activities, fishing boats, port-based ballasting, and all others, all scrubbing and wiping, all coating, all these activities are part of the problem. And if you want to address all the potential actors, you have to think of all this sector of activities. So what my colleagues from 7 have done, so you see that they have all these activities. We go back to the previous graph, and they have mapped all the actors that you would find behind these activities. And they have grouped them, and all typology are wrong, but they all provide some information. So they have grouped them in terms of professional actors, regulative or regulatory actors, individual actors, and social actors or collective actors. So that provides a kind of a map if you want to start a campaign or to develop ocean literacy within the society about invasive species in the marine environment, you should think of looking at all these people and their relative contribution to the problem. And then you start work on, if you want to target one group, how this group is related in terms of other actors and activities. And of course I won't detail. So then you go in one group, and what group, like legislator, why do they play a major role? Where do they act? And who did they influence in the system? So maybe if you know that, you'll be more relevant in terms of designing your message and the kind of media you'll use to reach their brains and eventually move their behavior. Ship owners. ship owners are very important actors because they make all the decision about what they do, about the captains, how they convince the captains not to deballast in the middle of the sea, to use clean facilities, and so on. So who do they influence? The ship officer, but also naval architect, because if they are very convinced that they should do something about the problem, then they will order ships with better design in terms of capacity to handle the issue and the problem. And of course, they influence the other way back, our previous group, the legislators. And we should convince them, and you know how this game is played. You play the game that you need the best, the more good guys among ship owners are the one who would ask the legislator to make hard legislation, because they will give them a competitive advantage against their competitors. So we should play with them. The same for the plastic industry. So all we go through all that, and we can develop such with this change. We can look at the group and then do what we will be doing next 2 days: design, focus on the group, design message, and design media. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Benny. A couple of questions, clarifications in terms of value chain and what emerges as interconnected actors along products linked to the environment. Any questions? Or otherwise we continue visiting. Yeah.
I fear this might sound really stupid, but I'll just say it anyway. Don't tweet it. I understand all that sort of that value chain. What kind of going through my head is, so for example in Crab Watch, in Sea Change, we're looking at the distribution of crabs around Europe, which will include invasive species. So sort of looking at a bottom-up approach, because kiddies love crabs. So if they find like loads of invasive species or something, these big crabs are beating up these native crabs, and they sort of have a campaign, and would that then influence that value chain? Do you see what I mean? So it could come from the bottom approach, and then sort of emotionally you get to those big people, those shipping and all those other actors. And maybe then they change their value, because sometimes coming from children, it has such an impact. I suppose I'm just trying to maybe simplify how you get through that value chain. Does that make any sense? Or am I just being really stupid?
No. I don't think you are not
you
really
can say
stupid.
Yes, I say stupid things.
No.
Yeah. Because I haven't sort of been immersed in all this, and I'm not an economist, and so I just kind of think, if those children went to Parliament or something, and got in touch with shipping people, would that be a more effective way to make a change?
Yes, that's my answer.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to answer, but the last week we were interviewing ship owners and people involved in the industry for maritime transport, and the cost of installing the water treatment system is so high. I mean, I was even talking with the architects, and I was saying, like, do you have the potential to influence those that are buying the ship in which system they will use? And they were saying, actually no, because it costs so much money, and we don't want to be like kind of playing and negotiating with them, because they are our clients and they pay us a lot of money, so we don't want to piss them off. Sorry for the expression. So we want to ensure that they are happy. They are happy with what we do. So the lower the price, the better. Potential, I guess there is, but because it's something that is so costly, I think there is need for top-down, bottom-up, and make sure things I wonder whether just kids going to the parliament could have a potential effect.
Oh, yeah, but if they're crying, oh the crowd is just disappearing. Sorry, it's been a long day.
Maybe one issue that is there is in what Denise presents. There is the organization around the value chain. That this is not the only way to structure connections between people in society. One that you say is also child, parents, and a wider look at society that is not directly made explicit here, which is a different way to understand influences and who can connect to certain issues.
Very well put.
So we see there is no children in Denis' graph, in his diagram. There is no children there, but still there is consumers, citizens, and that's where also children can be in. So only one part, one vision, I think, of
I think we must be quite careful because two different messages or two different campaigns can become very conflicting. And it depends very much. If we are an invasive, so then we can use the children, but then we have to make the children be very unhappy to see that crab, you know. I don't want a blue crab among the green crabs, and be very unhappy with that. On the other side, if your campaign is more on with the children, is we want to protect biodiversity, and more there is biodiversity, better it is. It's a different message. So the risk is that different message coming to the same children may look contradictory. So I would rather say that I would not target the children to make a campaign on invasive species. I prefer target the children to make a campaign on biodiversity, defending, protecting biodiversity, and having the children, cleaning the sea. Yeah.
There are rules for what we can do.
Yeah.